that happening to? When our experiences change, when our thoughts change, when our feelings change, when our forgetting changes and our remembering changes, what else is there? What else is there? A thought? Is the thought I am? Like that's what the Buddha is asking us to inquire into. And what about the experience sometimes when we're noticing an experience, and it could be chewing or walking or with the breath, where it is just the breath and knowing, nothing else, or just chewing and the knowing of chewing, that purity of connection, or the knowing of sensation, then there's forgetting. Then what happens? Who is knowing, who is forgetting? If all there is the experience and the knower, and then the knower isn't there anymore. And the Buddha is pointing to that experience and saying, check it out. Because if there is nothing that you can point to as a soul, then does that mean we're just a tangle of thoughts and opinions and ideas and experiences? Yes. That's what it does mean. And that's kind of mind-blowing, isn't it? And in a way, it could feel even scary. So I wanted to then speak to the very traditional text that explains what's going on, that is in a book called the Dhamma, which was written later than the early Buddha's teachings. It's said that this capacity to discern the mind came from Sariputra, the Buddha considered the wisest of those that were around him, close to him. So if there isn't a soul, what is there? And Ian mentioned this when he spoke about pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral Vedana. There is, and I'll read the first list and then we'll go through it again. There's contact, feeling, perception, volition, one-pointedness, life faculty, and attention. And these are arising and passing away so quickly that, like an old style film where you had each frame moving so quickly, the experience feels continuous, even though actually those old movies were made up of separate, is that right? Separate frames? Separate frames. That's this. This is the separate frame. In any 1,000th of a moment, which could be considered some type of second, so 1,000 times a moment, there is the arising of these different mental factors. And they're there, coming and going very, very quickly, so it feels continuous. Contact is happening all the time. So contact isn't an experience connecting with the soul. Contact is when it comes into one of the fields of the sense bases. And in the sense space connection with whatever is being contacted, all these other factors co-arise at the same time. It's not just contact and then feeling, perception, volition, one-pointedness, life faculty, and attention. They all come together at one time, and something is known, and it's one frame, very, 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 very fast, and that passes away. So when I see you, I'm seeing you, then you as what I'm seeing, the visual object, just to give it a kind of more traditional name, comes together with the feeling, the flavor of the seeing, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, right? With the perception. So remember when I told the story about walking in a gunkwit with my honey? So that guy who spat at us, that was one perception, my perception. So Sangha in masks, right? So Sangha in masks is the perception, that capacity of the mind to mark experiences and name it, and then enables us to recognize it again. Table. Table. All kinds of different tables, but somewhat 4 legs, 2 legs, 1 leg holding up, something that's somewhat of a platform. Perception in this first knowing with contact, along with Vedana, is this marking, oh, this is the experience. Here, Sangha. And all and each of you personally, because I've interacted with you, so knowing that too. And then there's volition. In every single moment, what is my intention? To stay connected with you, to split the scene, to love you, to communicate together, to puff myself up, to like, let me tell you, I'm reading from the Abhidhamma. Or, can I really read from the Abhidhamma? My goodness. Or all our stuff around who we are and what we construct, right? A one-pointedness, a very basic capacity to know an object and to know it enough in order to name it and experience it quickly. So a very basic one-pointedness. Life faculty, that means we're alive to do all this, some kind of energetic factor there. And attention, consciousness is the carrier of all these other qualities, this basic knowing, which lets us a very fundamental knowing, not like mindfulness or wisdom, but a more superficial basic knowing that we know that we're having, that we're seeing at the moment. I know that I'm seeing. I'm not dropping in more deeply. It's just a more superficial, oh, there are people in the room and they're wearing a mask, that kind of thing. That is the basic arising and passing all the time. And so you can kind of grok, or maybe I'll just point it out, that it's very contact driven. That consciousness is always arising and passing at one of the sense spaces, because there isn't a soul or anything else. So when something comes into contact with the tongue, the nose, eyes, ears, body, touch, and the mind. Even in sleeping, there's some contact going with the mind, very, very basic. There's always contact happening. There's one place where it isn't happening, and that's in nirvana. Otherwise, there's contact coming and going all the time. With this, then there are various other factors, and we've talked about the unwholesome or unskillful, or the factors that aren't beneficial, like greed, hatred, delusion, sloth, torpor, anxiety, doubt, revenge, fear, hatred, anger, craving, clinging, attachment, ownership. Those can be carried in one of these moments of consciousness or many moments of consciousness. or, because they never happen at the same time, the beautiful energies, the energies of liberation, faith, mindfulness, wisdom, generosity, compassion, appreciative joy, the flexibility and proficiency of the mind, samadhi, patience, truthfulness, equanimity, and ethical living. All those mental factors could also be there. And so volition, our intention, is the kind of engine in the train that will point from one moment or sets of moments of consciousness coming up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, towards either the wholesome or the unwholesome. If it's habitual, by definition, it's unwholesome, unless the mind has been habituated to the beautiful energies, or conditioned. That's a better word, because habitual is usually the unwholesome, conditioned to the beautiful energies. And in that sense, what we're relying on is that one moment of consciousness has been conditioned by the previous moment of consciousness of mindfulness. It's not I am conditioning, it's that the factors have conditioned, have created the opening for the same energy to come in the next moment. So it's mindfulness conditioning the mental, the consciousness, and all those factors to arise with faith and loving kindness. And it's intention that's supporting that. Intention guided by wisdom and faith, and they keep conditioning, when they're strong, the next arising. So just again, it's not that I am doing it, it's that it is happening according to the guidance of the mental factors and according to the contact. So it might be we're in the middle of touch, feeling the breath. In the mind is awareness. The awareness is immediately broken by someone opening the door. Now that could condition irritation, a whole different consciousness with the unwholesome factors. And then if there's mindfulness, the strength of the training will remind us to come back. But if there hasn't been any training, that could go in, and that reminds me how much my honey bangs the door every time she leaves the house, and it drives me mad because I'm already at the computer trying to write my Dhamma talk, and etc., etc. And then we're just like in it. So these things are changing all the time, changing all the time. One of the fascinating things, though, in this scenario is that even though our experiences are changing all the time, even though the knowing is changing all the time, even though the experiences of the different sense bases are changing all the time, there's something that doesn't actually change that much in the mind base, and that's our concepts, ideas, and opinions. They can stay the same unless they're included in the field of practice. They can stay the same. So that U Tejaniya says around impermanence, he says, yeah, the only things that don't change are nirvana and our concepts. I love that, because it really challenges us to inquire into some of the areas that remain held in attachment and an unexamined attachment. So, these two, even though they come again in their same expression, are also arising and passing as everything else is. So, in a way, that is so liberating, this understanding of who we are. because it's like, who is this being apart from this motley collection of arising and passing away that has had certain experiences, that has cultivated certain factors, and that is passing away all the time? I just haven't quite focused on that, known it. And that's why the Buddha stresses impermanence so much, because when we really bring all the changes that are accessible, because we don't have, or maybe some of you do, the depth of wisdom and the capacity to notice that many arising and passings away. But we do notice some of them, right? And we notice the changing of pleasant and unpleasant. And we notice the changing of how one moment our practice is divine, and the next is like, what happened? Suddenly everything changed, and I can't even actually connect with mindfulness. Like, what's going on? And we think there's something wrong with me when it's conditions changing and arising and passing and arising and passing. It feels very liberating to me. Like, so I don't even need to hang on to anything, because it's just an arising and passing. I'm just arising and passing. What am I hanging on to? You know, because it's changing all the time, and it is. And that knowing is the opposite of ownership, of the attachment of making an I out of certain aspects of ourselves. And of course, that very process creating a split, a kind of schizophrenic experience, because in owning any one thing, then something is shadowed, right? And not owned. And the way, just to like take one sentence, and we know the repercussions of that, because even very realized teachers in some subtle way have owned some aspect of, for example, how they understand their gender and their sexuality. Thank you, Zephyr, for pointing something out to me. So then they're homophobic, unexamined, because just that area, right, held onto. Just a subtle, not so subtle ownership. Yeah. Or any of the other ways that different groups have been disenfranchised in monastic communities. So to be inclusive, to be really inclusive, actually means challenging the I. That we own anything, because everything is changing all the time and we can't. Not really. Although we construct edifices of who I am, but they're just constructions. They're not in any way connected to the real experience and process. So then how can we enter into a transformational practice of freedom and liberation if we're operating from the construction and the edifice of who we've decided to be through our personalities, when there's a whole other process happening that we're not connected to or living in accordance with? That's why the Buddha talks about impermanence so much of the time. And so we could say that the invitation is not only just to stabilize the mind, but to begin to orient towards the arising and passing away of experience. And some of you have been here long enough now that it might be at times you would like to turn towards that, not so much to the content of the experience. Oh, my breath is like this. so groovy, yeah. But my breath is arising. And now my breath is passing. And where's it passing into? What's that space between the end of the breath and the beginning of the in-breath? We get to check it out. Like and as I mentioned last night, eating. Or I did come in at ease and now my body is all tense. The passing away of ease and the arising of tension. Or the other way around. Like not so much getting into the contact, but tracking the arising and passing of all experience. Because just in the noting, the mind begins to unhook according to these teachings. And liberation is when there is no tangle anymore. There is a deep surrendered into the arising and passing. And in that space, there's just what Deepa Ma says, loving kindness, equanimity, and I don't think she said wisdom, but of course it's implicit. Loving kindness, equanimity, and there was one other thing that I can't remember what she said. Concentration, maybe. So that's all that's there. And okay. Well, so I did want to say that I wanted to give a guided meditation this afternoon of the body with this particular focus. So if you're thinking, oh my God, when is she going to stop talking now? It's already 9:40. So just to say, I'll come in this afternoon and give a guided meditation. So then I just wanted to say one other thing, which is that in the Mahayana tradition, it is said that when awareness becomes so strong and has the capacity to know itself, so it's like awareness in awareness, that in its growth can become unchanging. And so it's said that the great masters, this awareness when it's in itself and it becomes pervasive, is cognizant, illuminating, light, like a crystal, translucent light, and unlimited. So, and another word for it is rigpa. So it's an unobstructed awareness, and the training is not to take an object, but to turn awareness to awareness. And that is something that we also can do as well. So just to say that to be comprehensive. Okay. Thank you so much for your listening this morning. May the Buddhist teachings become the condition, teachings on impermanence become the condition for freeing ourselves of our tangles. Okay, so I'll do a short guided meditation now, and we'll focus on the breath or sound, and then we'll end 15 minutes. So the beginning can be the same beginning, although everything is changing all the time, with the invitation of relaxation. So please feel supported to find a position that is as unsatisfactorily satisfactory. Acknowledging that the earth is underneath our bodies. And perhaps feeling that contact. If you're lying down with the whole body, if you're sitting up, where your feet are being held, if you're sitting in a chair or on the ground where the legs might be in contact, acknowledging that contact. This is what's alive. The body is alive, our minds are alive, turning towards that contact and knowing it. See if you would like to take a moment to appreciate yourself for your courage, to be willing to inquire into what's real for you. It's a very beautiful quality. Or it could be your caring or generosity. See what's there. Building a field along with awareness that supports awareness. Like noticing the touch of cloth on the shoulders. And how the tongue is lying in the mouth. And acknowledging the whole posture again. Your wish to know it, orienting to knowing, receiving the posture as it's living, not trying to change it, falling more into a receptive relationship. And then, if it's comfortable for you, listening into the breath wherever it's clearest in its communication. It could be in the rising or expansion of the abdominal or chest area, or in the stream of air that moves into the nostril, that touch, coolness. And the falling of the out breath, or how it comes out of the nostril area. Warmer, lighter, stronger. Gathering the energies to sustain a relationship with breath or sound. See if there is any sense of striving. Just noting that. Or of not wanting, noting that. Just for the next few minutes, if is it possible to let go of identifying with those. And whenever you're ready, particularly listening in to the birthing or arising of each in-breath and how it ends, and how the out-breath arises, comes into being and passes away. Receiving, letting awareness know the experience. Receiving it. If it feels too much, then you can drop it. Just come back to your knowing the breath as you usually do, or even body sensations. For these last 5 minutes, see if you would like to include the understanding that your knowing is coming and going as well. In a way, letting go, letting the life stream arise in these factors and passing away. Surrendering. Then anchoring again if it's helpful with the arising and passing of breath, sound, or body sensations. My breath is not me or mine. My body is not me or mine. My feelings are not me or mine. My thoughts, emotions, knowing, not me or mine. Thank you. So we have interviews, Ian and I, with our online Sangha today, and we'll see you all for the group inquiry later. Thank you.